Hello everyone, this is Tactical Lich here and welcome back for another game between Ezra of Astora and Lenorm on the 7th round of BBB Season 1 tournament. Now for the matchup today, we have Vampire Count versus Tzeentch. On the green side, Ezra is commanding the Vampire Count army. A front line of zombies backed up by some grave guards, and then further back a couple crypt horrors protecting, a single necromancer on a corpse cart, plus a single black knight with lances and barding. Their heavy armor, shields, and also magic damage would be very effective in dealing with horrors from Tzeentch. In the skies, a couple Vargheist supporting Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, one of the best duelists in the game right now, having multiple items and abilities that can give him a huge advantage in melee fights and block fights. The Vampire Counts also have some additional flyers for dealing with enemy skirmishers in the form of fellbats scattering around the battlefield. Now for the Tzeentch army, 3 Marauder Horsemen as a skirmishing force, and also a single Soul Grinder who is struggling to find a line of sight on the Crypt Horrors to shoot at them. So it will be backing off, and also Kairos Fate Weaver leading the army with Blue Fire of Tzeentch and Regrowth for some healing. Now for the infantry forces, very elite Tzeentch indeed, chosen of Tzeentch with halberd, 3 of them in fact backed up by single blazing squillers, exalted pink horrors of Tzeentch that can replenish ammo and also provide additional winds of magic regeneration. And that's it for the army builds. Now let's get the battle started. With the slow march of the Vampire Counts, it takes quite a bit of time for both armies to set up on the battlefield before engaging, so Kairos Fate Weaver will be pushing over the lines of the Vampire Count and perhaps do some blue fire kiting, shooting at some of the Vargheist here, while the rest of the army is just sitting back and the Soul Grinder trying desperately to find something to target and shoot at. The Crypt Horrors, Black Knights, and Necromancer are hiding in the tree to protect themselves from enemy artillery fire. Though these Vargheist are now caught out in the open, being shot up by Kairos Fate Weaver's Blue Fire, losing a single unit model and took out quite a bit of their health. Now, for the Tzeentch army here, the Chosen are not boxing up. Instead, they are spread out into 3 separate spots, trying to widen the front line as much as possible. This is actually not a bad idea, since that means the Chosen of Tzeentch will not be hit by the Helm of Discord all at once. If they box up, then the Helm of Discord being an area of effect ability / item, it will affect all the units nearby and all these Chosens will be debuffed, having a major disadvantage in the melee engagement. Now in the skies, Kairos Fate Weaver continuously kiting with those blue fire, chipping away the health of the Grave Guard, forcing an Invocation of Nahak to top up the health of these Vampire Count infantry. While in the front line, Chosens charging straight into zombies, their Tzeentch shield plus heavy melee defense and armor means that they would be taking minimal damage from all these zombies. Though the combat action does lower the vigor level, which will benefit the vampires later. Another blue fire goes into the unit of Grave Guards, now putting them down to half health, but perhaps more magic should be saved up for shooting down the Vargheist, as the Chosen can pretty much finish these Grave Guards. Not the greatest engagement, but not the worst for the Chosens either, since the halberds do have armor piercing. At the same time, the Tzeentch skirmishing force, the 3 Marauder Horsemen of Tzeentch, are moving around the flank here, possibly trying to screen away the Vampire Count's flyers. On the other side, Vargheist are moving in while the Fellbats are also encircling the Tzeentch formations. Now the problem with the spread out formation of the Tzeentch army is that being so elite with their Chosen, there is a lack of bodies to plug up all the gaps in the frontline formations. There's simply not enough manpower to stop the horde of undead, and Ezra is capitalizing on this. So Skeleton Warriors and Grave Guards are able to push through the gaps and now threatens the Blazing Squillers. More undead infantry are also wrapping around the flank where there is nothing to stop them, and they will soon overwhelm the Tzeentch backline with the Chosen pinned down by all the zombies in the front line. At the back here, Marauder Horses are being pushed away by the presence of Black Knights with their heavy armor, bronze shields, and great charge bonus. They can do devastating charge damage to all these Marauder Horses once they get the charge in, so the Marauder Horses had no choice but to back off. In the skies, Kairos Fate Weaver is fleeing for his life, being pursued by multiple melee flyers. He is not a great melee combatant and does not want to get tangled into melee fights. With the Tzeentch long-range firepower disabled, finally the Necromancer on the Balefire Corpse cart is waddling out of the tree line, trying to push close to the front line and provide the Balefire buffs to any surrounding troops. The fire resistance would be a great boon to any vampire units, especially the Crypt Horrors who are weak to fire damage. Now over here, the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord is dropping in with multiple abilities popped. Heart Piercing, providing extra weapon strength and charge bonus. Also, Helm of Discord lowering the stats of Soul Grinder. He really wants to get this Tzeentch demon down. Surrounded by multiple armor-piercing units, the Vargheists, Crypt Horrors, and the Blood Dragon Lord himself, the heavy armor on the Soul Grinder would not protect the demon, especially with the Heart Piercing from the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord sundering its armor. With the vampire monsters occupied, Kairos is doing some cheeky charges onto the Vampire Count infantry, while the Soul Grinder will be charging, cycling between multiple chosen units who act as a solid roadblock to screen away enemy monsters. But unfortunately, this does not stop the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord with his impressive mass on the dragon. Plus, the Vargheists are just constantly hounding this poor Soul Grinder, and the cycle charging is starting to take the toll on the Chosen of Tzeentch. The armor-piercing weapon strength on the monster is slowly taking its toll. Kairos is unfortunately forced to sit on the skies, and he does not want to tangle up in this kind of melee conflict. He doesn't have the greatest melee stats with 35 attack and 20 melee defense only. Even his physical resistance doesn't help him here, with the Balefire Corpse card providing magic attacks to surrounding vampire troops. Now, the Chosen in the middle are moving towards the left flank of the Tzeentch army, hoping to reinforce this side as there's just a lot of Crypt Horrors, and a single unit of Chosen is slowly being overwhelmed. Kairos Fate Weaver now diving into combat, but there is the support of the Chosen here, so they should be a reliable bodyguard for their Liege Lord, protecting him from too much melee damage. On the far side, Chosen are just holding solidly against all the zombies and skeleton warriors, but the problem is that one unit of horsemen are being chased off the map, and their ammo is very valuable in taking down enemy Crypt Horrors and Vargheists, as they do not have the greatest armor, making them rather susceptible to any javelin fire. Back to the front line, the Tzeentch blob is plagued by the Helm of Discord debuffs. As you can see here, after all the debuffs, the weakened Soul Grinder has taken substantial damage from the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, while it itself doesn't really do much damage here as it is trying to run for its life for the entire time. The Blood Dragon Vampire Lord now goes for a breath attack, really nice into the Chosen, who are now being topped up by a regrowth, sustaining their health and vigor levels in this prolonged melee grind. Meanwhile, the poor Soul Grinder is still under the pursuit of multiple Vargheist Cryptos and the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord himself. He'll be hopping into these rather healthy Chosen, hoping that they can stop their chase from all those vampire monsters. The Chosens are almost at full strength, and they should be able to deal with some of these monsters of the Vampire Count. Now on the other side, the two Chosen of Tzeentch have converged onto a single blob. Their elite status and a bit of armor piercing from their halberds are beating back all the Graveguards and zombie chaff. But unfortunately, their progress is slower than expected because of the Necromancer on his corpse card, providing the Vigor Mortis with the additional melee stats and Vigor Refresh to surrounding vampire troops. Now over here, the Marauder horses are shooting into the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, who is now indeed debuffed by the Warp Flame effect, thanks to the Marauder's own javelins. So that means it is now more susceptible to non-armor piercing firepower, just like these javelins, though the zombie dragons still have a bit of missile resistance to mitigate that damage. Over here, Soul Grinder receiving a regrowth from Kairos Fate Weaver, hoping to top up its health and sustain in melee combat a little longer, while the Marauder Horseman and the Soul Grinder can dish out a little bit more damage. The Necromancer's HP is running low from all the Forbidden Rod activation, so Kairos is dive bombing him, hoping to snipe him out, but unfortunately for Kairos, he just doesn't have enough melee attack when the Necromancer himself has 33 melee defense, just enough to protect himself in front of Kairos. On the far side, the Marauder horses are returning from the great escape from all the vampire mobility. With only 2 units of them left on the field, their ammo would be extremely valuable in taking down all those flying monsters and Crypt Horrors. Over here, you can see that the Chosen has taken down most of the skeleton warriors and zombies, and should be able to reinforce the other flank. The Chosens have been fighting through a horde of undead this entire time, despite being constantly poisoned by all the Crypt Horrors, literally getting hundreds of kills and definitely recovering their damage value, but this is against vampire counts, so that damage number would be inflated. But unfortunately, their health are running low, down to less than half health. Their leadership is being slightly affected by all the sustained damage. The Soul Grinder also running low in health and surrounded by all the vampire monsters, though the buggy charging animation from Flyers did save him from the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord for now. With all the Vampire Count monsters piling on top of the Soul Grinder, Lenormand tries to bombard them with that Tzeentch army ability, but unfortunately the Soul Grinder's size makes it take a lot of friendly fire damage as well. With the Blood Dragon returning for another charge, this time not bugging out the Soul Grinder will be finished off, and Kairos' attempt to heal it back up with Regrowth has failed as it died as soon as the Regrowth spell is cast, wasting a huge chunk of magic. That leaves Kairos as the only single entity killing power with the blue fire spams. The Marauder Horsemen are forced to move away as the Black Knights are moving in, pushing them out of the forest, and same goes for the other zombies, Crypt Horrors who are moving into the forest, probably trying to recover some of their HP with regeneration. Kairos, unable to challenge the vampires in melee, will be spamming blue fire once more, trying to chip away the health of the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord. He has dived into the Chosen of Tzeentch. The armor piercing and anti-large would theoretically do well against the Blood Dragon, but unfortunately, due to all the combat attrition the Chosens have taken, they are forced into a terror rout as their leadership is now quite low. Now seeing that the Blood Dragon is occupied on the Chosen, Kairos tries to dive down for a rear charge, but this time it is his turn to get affected by the flying charge bug. He won't be landing that charge, but instead escorting the Vampire Lord out of the blob fight. Now we'll be going into fast forward here, as the Tzeentch army had no choice but to stand and fight in here in the blob, while the Vampire Counts do have that mobility advantage here. They have more control on the conditions of engagement, using the Black Knights to push away the support of Marauder Horsemen and their Javelin Fire, and then charge in the armor-piercing monsters into the heavily armored Chosens. The shock damage plus the fear and terror on the zombie dragon basically triggered a massive rout from all the remaining Chosens. One of the Marauder Horsemen as well being caught by the Black Knight and now hunted down. They would not be coming back. They did some very minor damage to the Black Knights, but unfortunately the shields and the heavy armor means that most of that damage were mitigated. And without any mobility to screen away the monstrous infantry, all these routing Chosens will be hunted down by the faster Crypt Horrors and Vargeist. This leaves Kairos Fate Weaver alone, holding up the entire balance of power for the Tzeentch army. He's still spamming those blue fire, trying to chip away the health of the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, but there is no Tzeentch unit right now engaging in melee. Something needs to start engaging soon. For example, the Marauder Horsemen on the far side returning to shoot at any vampire units. That will count as fulfilling the attacking rule. Kairos charging into melee combat counts too, and with the support of the Marauder Horsemen, they are able to do some nice damage to the remaining zombies and some of the Vargeist. But the burst damage simply isn't enough to kill off all the Crypt Horrors, while the Lancers and Barding Black Knights are charging in, driving away all those Marauder Horsemen. Kairos also now surrounded by monsters, unable to pull out of this engagement. He'll be trying for a desperate attempt of bombarding everything in the vicinity with the level 3 army ability. Unfortunately, that is far from enough to turn the tables, and with Kairos' HP getting lower and lower, army losses is eventually hit, giving Azrael of Astora a victory with their vampire counts. GG to Azrael for the victory, and GG to Lenorm for challenging one of the most powerful factions in the current meta. For the army performances, Blood Dragon did most of the damage here, with 3,200 gold worth of damage value, basically biting down the Soul Grinder, charging Kairos Fate Weaver, and destroying some of these Chosen with the Terror and his armor-piercing weapon strength. The constant debuff from the Helm of Discord also helped a whole lot, debuffing the stats of the Chosens, making the fight of all these Crypt Horrors, Vargeist, and Grave Gods much easier, causing a lot more damage to the Chosens. For the rest of the army here, Vargeist did pretty solid damage with the armor piercing and the Crypt Horrors, one of the strongest unit of the vampire count right now, getting well over their own cost, almost heal capping themselves despite a lack of dedicated invocation of the hack for them. Now the Black Knights, they didn't really engage in the main infantry fight because of all the anti-large armor piercing, but they were responsible for chasing down all 3 of these Marauder Horsemen and accumulated some significant value. For the Tzeentch army here, the Marauder Horses didn't really do much damage here, other than this one survived till the late game, kept chucking their javelins at the unarmored vampire monster, but unfortunately just not quite enough to carry the weight of their companions. The Soul Grinder did minimal damage really, most of the ammo on the unit was unused. I assume Lord Norm was trying to conserve the Soul Grinder's ammo, but the Soul Grinder just didn't have any chance to shoot once it got dragged into melee by the Vargeist and Blood Dragon. The Blazing Squillers did minimal damage, a very expensive unit at 1,400 gold, so not quite enough to earn back its own value, as they were shut down early by the hordes of undead. But the Chosens though, definitely some solid damage here. Earned back most of their own value, this one not quite, but the other two definitely earned back well over their own cost. having literal hundreds of kills, cutting down zombies, skeletons, grave guards, and a whole lot of HP from the Vampire Count monster. Just that they did not have the kind of healing from the Vampire Count, so they were not quite able to hold in a prolonged melee grind. In the end, the vigor loss was quite significant there, debuffing their leadership, their melee stats, and their armor, making it easier for the Vampire Counts to rout them with the terror on the Vampire Count Blood Dragon Lord. Now for Kairos Fate Weaver, getting pretty decent damage with the blue fire spam, but unfortunately the healing available to Vampire Counts counteracted most of the damage. Overall, a great game from both players, Azrael having a solid command of the Blood Dragon Lord, and Le Norme employing an interesting tactic to try and counteract the Vampire Count's army. Now let us move on to a quick summary of 2 more battles. The battle we just showcased is actually the 4th battle of the series. Now we're seeing the 2nd battle with the Dark Elves versus Warriors of Chaos. The Dark Elves right now is kiting, not only with the Scourge Runners, but with also a bunch of Black Arquebusiers with their hand bows. The Chaos Marauders tries to push the Dark Elves, but the Dark Elf infantry simply backed off while the mobility charges in, disrupting the Chaos advance. As a result, Be'lakor decided to get some work done himself, dropping in, smashing up some Dark Elf infantry, but that triggered a response from the Dark Elves, crossfire from the Black Arquebusiers, from the Scourge Runner chariots, and then also a countercharge from Malekith himself plus a Soul Stealer, really putting in the hurt on the Shadow Prince. At this point, all the Hellstriders are severely battered by the earlier engagements, unable to counteract the Cold One Knight spam. Be'lakor was constantly forced to fight Malekith among a sea of Cold One Knights, which definitely does not bode well for him. With the Marauder Horsemen running out of ammo and Be'lakor himself running out of health, the Dark Elves will eventually dominate them on the battlefield. In the 3rd battle, Azrael left his 3 company militias outside the state troop box, giving Le Norme a chance to catch and destroy the Sterland's Revenge. They managed to regroup but are significantly weakened. Same goes for the other 3 company militia. The good news is there's still 3 war wagons outputting some armor-piercing damage. Though unfortunately, unlike Chosen, state troops do not have the same elite status and are relatively easy to break through. Especially when there's a Blood Dragon Vampire Lord involved, his Helm of Discord can nerf the state troops stats to a point that even the lowliest zombie can start doing damage to them very cost efficiently. With the Empire box breaking, the war wagons are no longer protected by the state troops and are forced to retreat away. And there's a lack of Empire melee cavalry. With only pistoliers on the background, there is nothing to protect the war wagons from the pressure of Blood Knights. The only thing that were keeping the Vampire elite cavalry at bay were the concentrated fire of all 3 war wagons. And then in the middle melee fight, Volkmar and his wagon is stranded among a sea of undead infantry. And that's why all 3 war wagons are trying to crossfire onto that Vampire Lord, even sacrificing some pistoliers to try and dissuade the Vampire Counts from pursuing Volkmar the Grim. At this point, the Vampire Counts is totally dominating the Empire in terms of balance of power, and the Empire simply do not have the troops or ammo to finish off the remaining Vampire troops, including the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, the Blood Knights, and all those undead infantry. The Empire war wagons are still trying to kite, but that is only delaying the inevitable. Eventually, they run out of ammo and are caught and destroyed by the Blood Knights, while Volkmar the Grim is also being hunted down by the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord. And with that, Le Norme will be emerging victorious with Vampire Count. And that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the battles. Be sure to subscribe to the channel as I'll be posting a 3rd and final video for this Best of 5 series. That's all for today, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.